size box that can be operated at the police department or in the crime laboratory. And it can be operated by, you don't have to be a technical person to operate. It can be operated by police officers. The idea here is that you can quickly, for example, if you have crime scene DNA like blood on a window at a burglary and you have suspects, you can take that DNA back to the police station or into the lab, run it, get an answer in 90 minutes, and develop your investigative lead on the day of the crime. So that's the big change that's coming with rapid DNA. What rapid DNA does not do, it is not a replacement in any way for the traditional DNA workflow in the laboratory. You still need that, obviously, for a lot of, not most of your casework, for specifically complex casework. Rapid DNA is not yet being challenged in court. So the way that law enforcement has adapted to this throughout the country with rapid DNA is this two swab mechanism. You'll hear about that through various speakers today. You take two swabs at a crime scene, one goes to the rapid for an investigative lead, and the other goes to the crime lab for if that case needs to go to court and can be presented in court. We always tell local law enforcement developing rapid DNA programs that the best local rapid DNA programs in the country are those developed in coordination with an accredited laboratory, and that's very important. There are, as I said, 5 rapid DNA applications that have emerged in the United States, and I'll cover each one. First one is the most common use of rapid DNA in all the installations around the country. This is the most common. It's simply that scenario I said. You got the crime scene, the blood on the window at the burglary, compared to the suspect. That's how rapid DNA is mostly rolling out throughout the country right now, that use for law enforcement. And this is can be done in 90 minutes, as I said, and has a huge exoneration benefit because you can quickly, if you have 3 suspects and you get the DNA for all 3, you can quickly exonerate 3 and hopefully leading to 1 as your investigative lead. Now, for the states or the local governments that don't have the ability or want to do more than just the one-on-one direct comparison, of course, law enforcement would love to have access to our lists of convicted offenders in the state and national databases. But at the moment, the FBI, and we'll talk about this in a moment, has not yet approved CODIS or your rapid DNA casework going into the CODIS network at the state or the national level. Therefore, a number of states have figured out a way to do this, allow this prior to the FBI rules. Connecticut's on our agenda today. They're going to explain their program that does just that. And this is basically taking your data, your state data of convicted offenders, setting up a non-CODIS database and only comparing your crime scenes on rapid against that. And the places that have done that, fully operational, Arizona, Connecticut, Kentucky, Indiana, and then under development, we know the Missouri, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and many others that are planning to do this as a stop measure before they have the FBI version available. Now, the good news for those states that are not going to set up a state non-CODIS database, the good news is that the FBI has recently announced a target date of January 2025, just 18 months away, in which the FBI will allow rapid done with casework at by the local police department or in a lab to go in to not just the national CODIS, or state CODIS, but into national CODIS. And this isn't just talk. The FBI is currently, as we speak, developing standards and procedures. They have actually posted their timeline document for this on the FBI website, which is a big move. In addition to that, they made a major statement at a national conference where they said to the state labs they should get ready for casework on rapid to be uploaded to CODIS. Now, the reason they said that is that state labs will be the gatekeeper of that process. So if you want to run it against state Estes and Estes, you're going to have the state lab turn the program on, basically. And we'll hear more about the Washington State Patrol. I believe they'll talk about this as one of their visions as the pilot to figure out how they might be able to get ready for this. Now, a lot of local governments have set up local databases where most of it's comprised of work done on rapid, whether it's from crime scene suspects or volunteers, and are doing matching at the local level. A lot of high-profile systems in the United States on this with rapid, from Philadelphia to New York, We're fortunate enough to have the Bucks County Sheriff with us today from Pennsylvania that had the original local database program using Rapid, and he'll talk about the success in reducing crime with his program. All right, the fourth application is in the booking station. So the idea of taking DNA at booking. Now, this is only an option for locations, states that have passed DNA at arrest at their legislature, and Washington State has not yet done that yet. If they do, the way it would work is that when somebody's arrested and they're giving their prints on APHIS or their live scan and mugshots, they would also be swabbed. The swab would be put in the Rapid that's at the police booking station. And by the time that person's released, they know if they're wanted for some unsolved crime that's in the DNA database. Louisiana was the first state to go live at the late 2022. Florida and Arizona are right behind them. And there are about 20 states that have the laws in place that make them eligible to do this. And we suspect most of them will be moving forward over the next 5 years. Okay, last application is the idea of using Rapid to match human remains to family members within hours, rather than have to send the samples down to the lab with the family members and the human remains. This is great application for accidents and disasters, getting answers right away. Also great applications for medical examiners and coroners throughout the United States. And this is part of the Washington State Patrol pilot program, and I'm sure the WSP will mention this during their talk later during the hour. All right, let's talk about the Washington State law of local governments processing DNA at the law enforcement level at the city or county. All right, to understand what you can and can't do, you have to look at both the RCW and the WAC. The RCW basically says a local government can only operate a DNA identification system when there is, and I've summarized here, technical and procedural alignment between Washington State Patrol and that local government. However, the WAC very narrows that scope of what a DNA identification system is. The WAC defines it only as having a database that contains the DNA records from those enumerated by the legislature, basically your convicted Washington State offenders. So that's it. So what does that mean? The impact of this law is local governments can certainly use Rapid DNA, provided you're not databasing the convicted offenders listed by the Washington State legislature. All right, there is an exception. You're allowed to do that. Local governments can build a database of convicted offenders, but you'd have to have that alignment and permission basically from the Washington State Patrol. So let's look at the various applications of using Rapid under Washington State. Okay, without a database. So if you're not databasing anybody and you're using your Rapid, and we're going to hear about many local governments getting Rapid in Washington State, this is for sure what you can do. You can compare your suspects, like I said, the blood on the window at the burglary against your suspects, the one-on-one matching, no regulation by Washington State law. Okay, no limitation. And I believe if you read the RCW and the legislative intent and where it fits in the statute, you can also create a database, but only of crime scenes. You can't have any suspects that possibly can be a convicted criminal offender under Washington State law go into that database. You could even, I suspect, under this law, you could take a suspect, run it against your database of crime scenes as basically a keyboard search. You could not database that suspect, though. That's where you'd run afoul. As you've noticed, I put this in yellow. I would advise that you talk to your city and county attorneys before doing this. But in my opinion, that would be allowed. All right, now we know that, again, law enforcement at the local level want to do more than just one-to-one matching that I've described above, and they're going to want to have access to those convicted offenders. There's a lot of them. Washington State, we have 320,000 convicted offenders. At the national level, you have over 20 million. So lots of hits that you could do on your Rapid test that you do at the local level or in the lab and putting it into the database. But under Washington State law, that's not allowed without Washington State WSP approval. So the options you have to get WSP approval are this. First, you could develop a local database of convicted offenders, but as I mentioned before, you got to go through those steps under the RCW. Second option you have is to compare them to a state-only non-CODIS database like you're going to hear from Connecticut. But again, that would require WSP to set that up. And the third option is waiting for the FBI to turn their system on. And that, as we hopefully will be in the next 18 months. But if once they approve it, WSP is going to have to set that program up. So in summary, you've got options you can use under Washington state law now with RAPID, and those that are getting RAPID at the local level, that's where you're going to be limited. But hopefully over time, you're going to at least have at a minimum option 3 available, and the WSP will talk about what that is. Okay, lastly, federal funding. So Rapid DNA has been the leading law enforcement request for the Congressional Community Project Funds during the last 2 years. All right, and under that program, the Community Project Funds, 37 sheriffs and police chiefs throughout the country have officially requested these funds for rapid DNA programs at the local level. Very high approval rate. 32 of those 37 actually been approved for funding or pending the next congressional budget funding, usually averaging about 600,000. 5 of those 37 or 32 actually come from Washington state. And you're going to hear from Sheriff Udell that's going to mention those 5 locations. The next round of funding, if you're interested in this program, is the FY25 budget. The final applications will be due in early 2024, but it's advisable if you're interested to start reaching out to your congressional delegation now. So that's the end of my talk. I would suggest if you want to find more on rapid DNA policy and informational issues, you go to www.gorapid.com. That is our learning platform for Rapid DNA, where we keep all this information. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Tim. Our next presenter is Tony Levatino. Tony is from Thermo Fisher Scientific, which is one of the 2 providers of Rapid DNA systems. Tony will provide a technical overview, including a short demonstration on how the Rapid DNA system works. Thank you for joining us, Tony. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Tim and Lauren. Hello, everybody. My name is Tony Levatino, and we're going to discuss Rapid DNA. So next slide there, Tim.
Okay, I just need to bring it up real quick. Okay. Okay.
Great. There are 2 manufacturers of Rapid DNA. This is the Thermo Fisher Rapid Hit ID system. Basically, it performs a full profile in less than 90 minutes. It compresses the standard DNA workflow, which is normally done in the laboratory, into a single desktop unit that's used by non-technical users. So it's very simple to operate. You insert evidence item, cheek swabs, other evidence material into the instrument, then the profile is obtained within 90 minutes, and you get a hit result. Next slide, please.
We are frozen. There we go.
There we go. All rapid DNA instruments have a choice between 2 types of cartridges based on the evidence that you're processing. The ACE cartridge on the left is used for reference swabs, such as buccal swabs or high volume blood. The one on the right is for investigative leads, such as blood, bone tissue, saliva, hair, clothing. So going into a crime scene, you have to make a determination what the item evidence is, and then when you go to the instrument to process, you select one of these sample cartridges. This is a presentation on how simple it is to operate the instrument.
It's going to play that, Tony. Hold on.
Biometric logon, collection of a buccal swab or evidence item, logging into it as evidence, placing it in a sample well into the instrument. After 90 minutes, you receive a result. One of 3 results. Next slide, please. These are the 3 results. With a green check mark, you have a full DNA profile, which if the system is set up in compliance with the lab, it can pass through to a database. A yellow X indicates that the system has looked at the DNA profile and is going to ask for a DNA analyst to review the electronic profile. and a red X means there's no DNA present. On the green check marks, when it passes to the database, your profile is compared to all of the profiles in that database. When there are certain artifacts or there's low level amount of DNA, which the instrument cannot interpret, then you need reach back support, and that is from a participating laboratory with a DNA analyst who can then open up the profile and take a look at it. And if there's enough DNA material, can manually approve it to pass through to the database. And we provide several resources, including training. When you purchase the system, there's an online training portal, but there's also many different types of materials available to assist you to be able to identify and process DNA. This is an example of some of our materials on exactly what DNA to collect in terms of sample types and the amounts. So once you set up a system, there's plenty of resources in order to train your personnel and provide guidance. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tony. We will now hear from Cheryl Carraro and Savasti Papakanakis. Both Cheryl and Savasti are assistant directors with the Connecticut Forensic Laboratory, which is part of the Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection. Cheryl and Savasti will discuss the statewide rapid DNA program in Connecticut. It's great to have you both with us today. Over to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just give me a second, guys. We're having some little IT, but I'll get it going in a second.
Did you get the email or is this the other one?
No, it's the original one. Sorry.
All right, no, we'll just skip them.
Okay, here we go. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
That's us. You want to take that?
sure. So just to give you a little background on us, our forensic lab is the only lab in the state. And we have 3 central units: chemistry, biology, identification, that encompass all of the listed units. As you can tell, we're a multidisciplinary lab, so we have a lot of things that we need to take into consideration when we're bringing on new technology like rapid.
Next slide.
And again, like Washington State, we are not an RSD state. So when rapid DNA first came out, it was a little bit of a mind bend to figure out how we were going to use this valuable technology in our casework. We focused on crime scene samples, and we were online for the use of rapid DNA using crime scene samples in July of 2021. We set up our rapid instruments as essentially a screening tool for our law enforcement agencies. We set up a 24/7 kiosk that the PDs have access to. One is set up at our laboratory in Meriden, which is centralized in the state. And then we set up a second instrument at Waterbury Police Department, and all agencies have access to either of those. We also have over 100 and I would say about 110 agencies that submit evidence to our lab.
We can skip.
The PowerPoint is, skipping
Yes,
about, but
skipping the SOP review. Where are we?
Sorry, guys. I'm going to
No,
interrupt.
that's
real
okay.
quick.
If
I-
you
I
guys
just-
go to number 3.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. Apparently we're having a technical difficulty and people aren't seeing the slides, but is our computer person on the line? Michael, are you with us?
Someone raised their hand.
Okay. Michael, are you there? Okay, so maybe I'm going to start sharing again, and maybe that helps. Okay. All right. Well, what we'll do now, let me go to, were we right here, guys?
If you could go to slide number 3, please.
Okay, is that it? No.
No. Rapid
Okay.
process. All right.
Right here.
All right,
That
you
one.
can stop right
this
there.
is-
Yes, right
This is
there.
what we're gonna do. For the audience, I apologize if you're not seeing the slides. But what we'll do is, we'll have everybody go through the slides. And then and we will also post these slides right afterwards. So let's just move forward to that. I don't really know how to do it.
Real quick, someone also just put in the Q&A that they logged out and logged back in, and they can now see the slides. So if any of you want to give that a try, that might work.
Okay, so if you're not seeing the slides, please log out and log back in, and we'll proceed. Okay,
Okay.
Cheryl and Sevi, let's move forward.
All right. So our rapid process that we train the officers basically is swab in, profile out. It's about 96 minutes for the Intel cartridge, and that's the one that we use for crime scene samples. And so we tell them that within 2 hours, they potentially can get hit because we have a database that has a copy of the state convicted offenders. And the profile comes out, it searches small pond, and there might be a lead developed from that sample. Next slide. So the goal is the AB swab collection. We train the officers to use 2 swabs at the same time, so there's no argument about sampling issues, because if you use one and then go for another, that could be argued that's a different sampling. So we train them to take the 2 swabs at the same time. They put it into the cartridge, they put it into the instrument, and and we review, as DNA analysts, we review all the DNA profiles before they go into small pond to make sure that they're good single source profiles that we're putting in. You can skip the validation slide. So our rapid program is outside the lab's accreditation scope. It's a tool used for officers. We did follow as closely as we can all accrediting standards and the FBI. That's what I'm looking for, the FBI recommendations, sorry. Yes, and again, 2 swabs, they're instructed to package the swabs separately. So if they take 2 swabs, they're going to package one for rapid testing, and they're going to package the other swab for conventional lab testing. Next slide. We've trained over 350 law enforcement from city, state, and federal. We do a couple-hour presentation, a whole entire training program, and there's a PowerPoint presentation, review the SOPs, they take a written exam, they do a practical exam, and then every year, one of us will watch them do a sample so that they can have a proficiency test throughout the year. So yeah, that was the same, about 350 trained law enforcement officers from about 75 federal local police departments. You could skip this slide. So we also make sure to explain to them that from our validation that we did, rapid DNA is sensitive, but conventional testing is much more sensitive. It's a 3 to 4-fold difference in sensitivity levels. So anything that's low level touch, things that like doorknobs and car doors, we recommend not to run because we've seen no success with those. But there are types of samples that we'll go over in a minute that are good to use.
You can skip
Skip this one. They get a certificate at the end. Let's skip that one.
So one of the criteria that we have for our agency is because we have hundreds of them that could potentially use the instrument. If a police department is going to house an instrument, we have written MOUs with that police department that essentially says they will follow all of the lab's criteria, and that includes quality checks and instrument runs and reagent checks. We make sure that the operators are performing the weekly maintenance. And that just guarantees that the instrument is maintained to our standards in order for the PD to access the database. Next. And just to reiterate that the law enforcement agencies don't have to do anything as far as data review. Once they run that sample, the rapid administrators at the lab are able to remote into each instrument and review the data and decide from there whether it needs to be moved on to the database or not. We will then do the reach back to the agencies and let them know whether they have a hit or not.
Next slide. So just some statistics, about 450 samples are tested to date and provided searchable DNA profiles. Many more have been tested, but not searchable. We have small ponds, that's our database, and about 100 of the samples uploaded have provided valuable information, investigative leads to convicted offenders in Connecticut.
And I just want to point out really quickly, because I think a lot of people were logging off and logging back in when we mentioned it, but the database that we're searching for Rapid is a carbon copy of our state offender database. It's not the actual state database.
And we also update it with new convicted offenders every month. So brand new offenders get in there within the month. Next slide. So successful crime scene samples, blood, semen, epithelial cell swabs, skin cells. There's certain types, wearer DNA, baseball caps, face masks, clothing, water bottles, cups, chewing gum. We've done a lot of different types of scenarios and crime scene samples for officers. Touch samples, really low level touch samples don't work that great. In the future, it'll be better, I'm sure. So our value of investigative leads for the officers. Oh, heck.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I mean, we know that you went over this, Tim, but just, to reiterate that it's not just about identifying a possible suspect. It's sometimes we have more information that's useful, like for unidentified remains, or linking cases, or linking crime scenes to each other, doing direct comparisons to a suspect known or to a victim known. And it also helps us as a laboratory triage evidence. If there are multiple pieces of evidence and we know that a particular sample gave us a valuable profile on Rapid, then we focus on that sample when it gets to the lab.
Yep. And the just to add that the yellow check marks or X's that you get when there's artifacts or there's dropout in the profile, we still can sometimes be able to grab information for the law enforcement officers, like direct comparisons and whatnot. Paternity, unidentified human remains. You can skip this one. There's just press releases from some of our cases. Okay, so the goal is to make rapid DNA in Connecticut accessible to across the state for everybody. So we are now adding in more kiosks in police stations, and we're going to develop a mobile crime van containing rapid DNA and also NIBIN and another instrument that can be deployed to scenes or deployed to a particular police agency to sit for like a week, and they can go in and use the rapid. Next slide. So this is when we're done so far, this is the plan. We're going to have all these instruments. In the forensic lab, there's 2, Hartford State Police Troop E, a mobile van, Waterbury Police Department, New Haven Police Department, Greenwich PD, which is very close to New York, and Bridgeport PD. And all of these instruments go into our server, which houses the software that Sebi and I can remote into any time of the day. At home, we can do it on our laptops or in our offices, doesn't matter. Next. And that's a picture of the current mobile van we have. We're redesigning one to be able to fit Rapid in there. I believe that's brass tracks. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl and Savasti. Our next presenter is Sheriff Fred Herron. Fred is currently the sheriff of Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And before being elected sheriff, Fred was an early pioneer of using rapid DNA when he was the police chief of the Bensalem Township. Fred is going to present the application of using Rapid DNA to create a local DNA database. Sheriff, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lauren.
Ready to go.
Okay. All right. Good. I guess good morning to you. Good afternoon to me here on the East Coast. As Lauren had said, I'm in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is in the southeast corner of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a large state, but the 5 counties in the southeast have a big chunk of the population besides the Pittsburgh area. So what's unique about us and where I came from in Bensalem is that we border the city of Philadelphia, which certainly we'll talk about at the end of the presentation. Let me tell you a little bit about Bucks County. You can see Bucks County is about an hour and 20 minutes north to south and only about 20 minutes east to west. So we're very long. It looks like Italy almost with the boot down at the end. Population about 626,000 residential, but about 1.4 million, about 600 square miles. Pennsylvania is a Commonwealth. We have a lot of police departments, and there's only 3 CODIS labs in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Philadelphia has their own. Allegheny County, which serves Pittsburgh, has their own. And the rest are for the remaining 1,150 some odd police departments that are out there. So that's a lot of departments submitting to one laboratory that really, they do a great job, but they don't get the resources they need by the state. So where are we? Which rapid DNA application did we decide to go? Like you, rapid at a booking station, not an option for Pennsylvania because we are a convicted felon state. We do not take DNA at time of arrest by state mandated laws. We'll talk about what we do in a few minutes. We do crime scene database to suspect, the most simple use of rapid DNA, and we get some good results, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Casework against state offender database can't do that because we don't have the state won't allow us access to their database. But what you heard from Connecticut, we do the same thing you'll hear with Philadelphia, where we do a carbon copy of their LOTUS, their local database, their eldest from CODIS, and we'll talk about that at the end as well. Local reference databasing, so one-to-one, a person that we have as a suspect to a crime scene that we can do, which you can do. Next. So with all this, how did we get to where we were? As Lauren said, we were one of the first. There were 4 municipalities in the Space Coast of Florida that were doing DNA every day. And then we became the 5th in the country, and then we became the first to use rapid in 2017. So going back to 2009, I was presented with the idea of looking at DNA every day outside of the state lab. It wasn't something I really understood, so I sent some people down to get a better feeling for it. 2 of these detectives thought they were going for a free vacation in Florida. They came back 16 hours a day learning about DNA, and then they presented the idea to me, and then I said, well, this is pretty interesting. Let's see if we could try it. And we did this in 2010. In 2014, half the county came on board, and in 2015, the rest of the county came on board with local databasing, which we're really not going to spend any time talking about. We're really focusing on rapid today. And in March of 2017, we became the first police department in the United States to have rapid DNA testing every day, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365. And in February of 21, in the midst of COVID, we got slowed down a little bit. We started doing regional databasing with other counties and Philadelphia Police Department. Next. Focus of the program was to use DNA every day as an investigative tool. This was not, we were going to go do DNA testing, get a result, and go run out and throw handcuffs on somebody. It was just a lead. It was another tool in the toolbox, which I think what a lot of people don't realize, this is not the end-all, God-all, but it's just another lead that's now accessible to us. This is not a theory. This is not a concept. This is everyday, real life that you can utilize DNA. We get out of our reported crimes, we get DNA, about 95% of them. Next. Again, Pennsylvania is not a arrestee state. We get our DNA either through judicial order or consent. Why do people give us their consent? I only got 10 minutes. So I have my theories why people give us their DNA, but why do people let you search their car when they got 7 kilos in the trunk? It's the same theory. It's the same reasons. So a lot of people, about 94% of the people we arrest, will give us their DNA freely. We've come up with a pretty good form, protocols for collecting DNA. They swab their own mouths, they sign it, we read it, they read it. We've been challenged in court, and we've upheld our protocols. We continue to do training. I think you heard that from Connecticut, how important that is. Next slide. Like Pennsylvania, local law enforcement in Washington State is not yet able to search the state database. We talked about that. Washington State law does not easily allow local law enforcement to establish their own DNA database. We don't have that problem in Pennsylvania. It's something we can do, not like Washington, but we are very similar on other aspects. Therefore, I'm going to focus, the couple of cases I'm going to talk about right now are going to focus on what you could do in Washington State too, comparing one-to-one crime scene to suspects that you might have. Next. There's literally dozens and dozens of these cases, but we're going to talk about 3 particular cases. One is an actual just crime case. One's going to be an exoneration, and one's going to be a quadruple homicide, which I think is very interesting. It covers multiple aspects of what we're trying to talk about. So the first case, we had multiple vehicle thefts, something very, very common. We're not even though we border Philadelphia, we don't get a lot of whodunit sexual assaults and not a lot of whodunit homicides. Most of our sexual assaults are relatives or date rape situations, people that are known. Our homicides are mainly people that are known. So we don't get a lot of whodunits. We do get a lot of whodunit property crimes and robberies. In this particular case, we had an onslaught of vehicle thefts, something that most of you experienced as well. But in one particular case, we also had an elderly victim who was robbed of her car, a carjacking at knife point. A suspect was developed. We obtained his DNA. We threw it through the rapid machine. And what do you know? He hit to the robbery and to 6 other auto thefts. This is a simple case of how using rapid DNA in 90 minutes will get you a hit to other crime scenes, where we had 6 auto thefts and the robbery. If we would have sent this to our state lab, they do a great job, but they are overwhelmed with the major crimes, the sexual assaults, the homicides, the aggravated assaults, the other armed robberies. They're not really dealing with auto thefts. It's not high on the list because they're just overworked. So here we're able to do it ourselves locally. Next. The next case is a great exoneration case. This is an individual that was on our Megan's Law list. He was a known sexual assault individual. His girlfriend lived in this particular apartment complex. He was seen on surveillance camera near this elderly woman's apartment, condo rather. She says she appears to be a great witness. Her son is an FBI agent, gives her a little bit, maybe more credibility. She says so-and-so assaulted her. If DNA didn't exist, he'd have been arrested and convicted based on everything we had. Her eyewitness testimony. He says, I didn't do it. The detective, there was just something that didn't sit right. The suspect evidently drank coffee during this commission of this crime. What do you know? It wasn't him. She went to name 2 other people that sexually assaulted her, and it wasn't them too. By the time she got to the 4th person, the DA did not want to move forward with this case. We found out later this woman was suffering from some mental illness that was never revealed to us. So this guy probably would have went to jail for a very, very long time if it wasn't for DNA. Next case. In July of 2017, keep in mind, we went live with Rapid in March of 17. That's very important. We had a young man from our township in Bensalem trick these 4 young men to come to his property. You could see the dates that they went missing. They were going there to buy marijuana. You shouldn't die for buying marijuana. Regardless of your feeling on drugs, no one deserves to die for buying marijuana or anything else. He winds up luring them, next slide, to his family farm, and where he kills them. We're able to obtain some other information, led us to the farm. There's some blood on the floor of the farm, one of the barns, and we find out by taking that blood to a laboratory and then using the missing boys' toothbrushes and running it through Rapid, that it hits to these kids. And we know that they're the ones that at least their blood is on his property. Therefore, we figure they're on their property somewhere. To make a long story short, this investigation continued for a couple of days. Three of the boys were buried in the same shallow grave. Another one was about a half-mile away. The boys were burned and beaten pretty badly. It was hard to identify them. We utilized rapid DNA to identify the boys using their toothbrushes from their houses. The use of rapid really saved the family, not only helped us with this case, but saved the family a lot of anguish on being able to identify their sons much quicker than we would have the old-fashioned way. Next slide. Next slide. Now, regional, I know I'm going 2 minutes over. Give me about another minute and a half. We're utilizing Philadelphia. We're utilizing their Lotus, and I'm just going to show you some amazing results. Next slide. So, keep going. Next. All right, fine. Philadelphia on the left, homicides are hitting to our retail thefts and narcotics. 11 sexual assaults in Philadelphia are hitting to our domestic assaults and narcotics violations and sexual assaults. 4 additional cases in Philadelphia are hitting to our narcotics violations and warrant arrests as well. So minor crimes in Bucks County are hitting the major crimes in Philadelphia. Next slide. Next slide. Next. Keep going. Keep going. We'll skip this. Go ahead. You really want to get the public involved, right from the onset. There's nothing hidden here. You really want to be open with your community groups. We brought the NAACP on board early on, just to show people that there was, that this was not anything that, maybe the folks were trying to say that we were targeting people. We were very upfront, very open about our numbers, and I think that's very important. This is nothing secret. This is it's a science. It's not anything more than science. Some of our numbers, we've got about a little bit more than 53,000 in our database right now, about half reference, half evidence, and you could see the leads that we're getting. 26 elimination cases. I think somebody said, well, why am I talking about 26 cases? That's people that could have went to jail that are not in jail now because of this project. Next slide. Next slide. I think this is really remarkable. We've seen a 42% reduction in burglary. We're seeing reductions in robberies. We're seeing reductions in auto thefts, a 26% reduction in auto thefts. We're seeing some incredible numbers. And I think that speaks volumes for itself. Next slide. Next, there we go. That's my DNA profile up on the right-hand side. That's me. You can't do anything with it. So for those that think DNA is all the secretive stuff, I put my DNA profile out there all the time. It means nothing to me. I can't read it. I mean, I'm a cop. I'm not a scientist. That's why you must work with a lab, because they're the experts. Please, if there's anything I can do for you after this, please don't hesitate to contact me. This presentation is normally about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So I hope I didn't go too quick.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff Herron. We now have the pleasure to hear from Jody Sass, and Jody is a forensic scientist in the DNA unit of the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab. Jody also serves as the Washington State Patrol CODIS manager. And Jody is going to provide an update on the Washington State Patrol's Rapid DNA pilot program. We are pleased that you could join us today, Jody. Over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and good mid-morning to everybody. And so I am here to give a brief overview of our Rapid DNA program. So in 2021, we were fortunate to receive money from our legislature to look into rapid technology. The proposed benefits was an expedited DNA testing to reduce investigative times for the law enforcement agencies. We were able to leverage 2 additional scientists and then to also help with identifying remains in a mass disaster type of event. So our current status is that in July of 2022, we hired our 2 forensic scientists. One is a technical lead in our CODIS laboratory that is overseeing this rapid DNA project, and 1 forensic scientist in our Vancouver laboratory to assist. As of June of this year, we were able to procure 3 different 3 rapid instruments, and 2 of them are in our CODIS laboratory and 1 is in the Vancouver laboratory. And we were fortunate to be able to purchased 2 Thermo Fisher rapid hit ID systems and 1 Andy 6 system. Go ahead.
Okay. Jody, there we go.
Next slide.
There it is. Is that it?
Nope.
Is that it? I only had 3 slides, Jody. Is that?
Right. I guess I'm still seeing the first slide.
Oh, I'm not. The one I'm showing, oops, let's bring it back up.
Can you go back one more? Now I
Yeah,
see
let me
the last
just-
slide.
Let me,
Oh, sorry.
I know it's, okay, let's do, how about now? You see that?
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay, let me just quickly, sorry, audience, I'm gonna turn back on the share. Okay, you should see it now.
Yes, I see the second slide.
Great. Okay.
So what do we know about the rapid DNA technology? And we briefly have heard this through the other talks. It is currently approved by the FBI for single source reference samples. And there's 2 separate applications. One is for arrestee states in their booking stations in conjunctions with their state CODIS laboratory. And the goal for this is to immediately be able to produce the profiles of those samples, searching CODIS, and identify any matches before that individual is released from custody. And then the next application is in an accredited laboratory to use this technology on reference samples that would be submitted for a case or in the CODIS laboratory. What we do know is that at this time, it is not approved by the FBI for crime scene samples to be uploaded or searched in CODIS. The limitations at this time is the lack of sensitivity, and another one is the ability for mixture interpretation. We do know, and also was reported earlier, the FBI is currently working with the manufacturers and other partners with the improvement on this technologies with policies and procedures. And it is slated in the beginning of 2025 to be approved for crime scene samples for CODIS access. Next slide. So what is our current strategy to phase in this technology? And so we're phasing it in 2 different phases. One is we're focusing on what it is approved to do. And so we have 2 prongs for this. One is we're going to be bringing it into the CODIS laboratory and a casework laboratory to be validated and be using it on reference samples that are submitted to the lab. We are also at the same time going to be developing a mass disaster response program. We're going to be building partnerships, and we're going to be able to identify human remains by testing different bone, teeth, and tissue, for example, and then be able to compare those to reference samples. So we are excited to be able to develop this type of DNA response program. And then our phase 2 is that we'll continue to assess the suitability of rapid to test crime scene samples. And so it is our vision by using this approach is that we will get our experience by using it and validating it for reference samples, developing our mass disaster program. And with that experience, it will provide us the experience that we'll need that when it is validated for the crime scene samples, we'll be in a very proactive situation to immediately start testing those samples for CODIS searching. And so that's basically what our strategy at this time is.
Okay, thank you, Jody. Our final presenter today is going to be Sheriff Robert Udell from Yakima County. Sheriff Udell has served as the elected Yakima County Sheriff since 2019, and Sheriff Udell is going to explain the rapid DNA program being planned in Yakima County. He will also let us know about other local law enforcement agencies in Washington State that are currently planning to advance rapid DNA programs. Over to you, Sheriff Udell.
All right. Thanks, Lauren. Coming to you from beautiful Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, as I'm on vacation today, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk about what we're doing in Yakima County. Now, Yakima County is a large county situated right in the south center part of Washington State, and we're known for apples and wine and dairy products that unfortunately are a significant crime problem. And our crime just doesn't seem to stay in Yakima County. It goes all over the region. And I know that a lot of other agencies across the state would like to see us do a little bit better. And we have a lot of room for improvement. And I'm going to talk about what we're going to do to get better in Yakima County, especially using rapid DNA. We have 13 different agencies in our county, 4,300 square mile, and we don't do a very good job of communicating together. We're stretched out all over the place. We probably deal a lot with the same people, but they go from place to place, and we don't do a great job of keeping track of them. So about 18 months ago, a couple of gals came to my office and they asked if they listened to the idea they had. And their idea was actually pretty simple, that we finally joined together as a group and fund a local crime lab, a set of analysts working in a specific case level evidence equipment so that we could just flat do a better job. And like anybody knows, when you do a great big project, it was 18 months before we finally got this thing up and going, but it is roaring. We have been amazingly successful in hiring staff for this project, and it is going to be something else. And I will say after Yakima, because we have a bit of reputation for our crime here, I think Yakima's probably the last place anybody thought that we would truly band together to become one and organize ourselves and be much more effective and efficient. So before I get to the DNA, the other two things that we're looking at in our lab is going to be the NIBIN machine. We have that's getting set up right now. Yakima County also has an above average number of firearms crimes. Firearms are linked to my county from all over the region. So the NIBIN is going to really make, again, a faster identification and coordination towards solving those types of crimes. And also, I think it's going to get all 13 agencies much more consistent in getting those brass casings picked up, and so that our database can be much more effective. We also are going to have cell phone forensic technology and programs so that we can all have that available. There's only a couple agencies in the county that are able to utilize that technology right now, but we're going to bring all of Yakima County on board with that technology. But probably the biggest one, the one that we are the most excited about, is the rapid DNA. Clear back, I think it was 2019 or 2018, I listened to Dave Reichert give a presentation on this technology over at our academy, and I came out of there with one of my chiefs thinking that this was the future. You know, this genie's out of the bag. This is the way we probably all will go, especially with these rapid DNA machines. We all know DNA is a fantastic source of solving crimes, and I think now people actually expect it, right? I mean, we have trials, and if you don't have DNA evidence, you got to do a lot of lawyering to make sure that you get your case to the resolution you want, simply because people expect this type of evidence. So in our county, we are a majority Hispanic county, and a lot of those folks are monolingual. We struggle in gaining their trust. And a lot of times we don't gain trust simply because we don't do a good job of investigating all of those crimes. This is the path. This is the path right here to getting fast results, fast turnovers to the people that we serve. And it's big not just on inclusion, but exclusion, being able to take our valuable resources and move towards where we need to be. I don't think I mentioned when I opened it up that my sheriff's office is the smallest sheriff's office in the state per 1,000. We have very limited deputies. The police officers are in the same boat in the county. All the agencies are well understaffed. We've got to have them doing what they need to be doing without wasting time. This is the path forward. Focus on those that need to be focused on. I know the Buck County Sheriff, he does a great job talking about how it's worked for him. I want to see those exact same type of results in our county. The fast resolution, let's see, what else have I, oh, you know, the current DNA. Let me talk about that real quick. The current DNA situation in our state, I think everybody on this call probably knows exactly where we stand. The State Patrol does not get the resources that they need. They do a fantastic job. I know when I was a detective, I really enjoyed forming relationships with the scientists, but they can only do so much so fast. And with months of waiting, evidence can get stale. We've even had a rape case in Yakima that was dismissed because of speedy trial rules. That is the kind of thing that we want to avoid. If we had rapid DNA when that case was going, then we probably would have been able to send the right sample to the lab so that they could get on it and not have to wade through other things like other samples that probably are not nearly as valuable. So on this slide right here, we kind of already, it's already been touched on by the other speakers, so I'm kind of going off my slides a little bit, but you can talk about it. It talks about the two different samples that we're going to use. Develops the DNA profiles in under 2 hours, exclusions, inclusions. It's crazy. Investigative leads, that's where we want to be. We want to be able to help that cop on the road or that detective in office to establish probable cause. Let's go to the next slide. So already in Washington State, DNA is starting to bloom. You can see that we purchased our system through ARPA, or will be purchasing our system, and we're getting going with that like right away. We'll be getting that order in probably weeks away. But also Spokane County, Thurston County, King, and Whatcom all have money, hopefully coming to them from the feds. What does this mean? There's going to be more counties that we put in for federal money as well to move this DNA program forward. It is, like I said before, it is the wave of the future, and we're excited to be at the cutting edge of procuring rapid DNA. We may be the first county to actually have a machine up and running. Okay, next slide. Now this has been pretty much gone over by everybody, I think, already, and some people probably did a lot better job than I would do. We're going to do everything by the book. We're excited for the lab to be accredited. The two sample system, all that is going to work out perfect for us, and it's going to work out especially for the people that we serve, as I said before. In property crimes, I think is huge for us. We have a lot of property crimes, great big county, not many cops, and we rarely use DNA on property crimes. Rapid DNA is going to be a game changer for us. As a detective, I've solved property crimes with DNA, but it requires, right, that relationship with the scientist to somehow squeeze that property DNA in this huge workload they have to take care of. So it's so much excitement to have something like this in our own building where we can get samples done immediately. Now we are very excited to do this. Let's go to the next slide, see what, there it is. Okay, we talked about the timelines. I know Jody talked about the timelines. It's coming up beginning of 2025. But if there's a mirrored system before that, that'd be great. But we know hopefully by then we're going to be doing it. But this, we're so excited to continue our relationship with the State Patrol, and able to put out those samples, make sure they get the best samples, and then provide that case work level assistance to our guys, tying all of our agencies together and start cutting down. And I've talked about a lot of this. There we go. I've already hit this one. Tyler's speedy trial requirements, limited number of samples for the State Patrol. They can only do so much. Violent felonies, we're going to do property crimes now. It is going to be good. And the pilot program, Jody talked, is bigger than that now, right? They're moving on towards what the FBI is going to allow. So I'm very excited to talk about what we're doing, how we got together in a local crime lab to purchase the equipment and start making some changes in Yakima County. And truly, everybody in this call, I think we're going to start making changes that you'll see across the state and the region. as some of the people, our bad guys that are out there making everyone else miserable across the state, understand that Yakima County is going to be all over them like a bad smell. So thanks, Lauren and Tim, for giving me the opportunity to talk about what we're going to be doing.
Thank you, Sheriff. So now we have time for probably a few questions. I'll give it a second to for you all to post in the Q&A. Okay, Sheriff Heron, this one is for you. The question states, you said you have a second swab available to test by a crime laboratory if the suspect goes to court. How often does the lab results have a different result than the rapid?
That's a great question. The answer is 0. We have never had a result differ from the rapid instrument.
Can we also just chime in on that? As a
Sure.
lab who does every single rapid sample and then confirm it in the lab, we have 100% concordance as well.
Can I ask, do you think a lot of that comes from the training of only running rapid eligible things that you know that are single source? Is that
No,
why?
that's from the robustness of the system. It's the exact same procedures we do in the lab. It's just in a
If there's a major profile there, if
system.
there's a lot of DNA there, they're going to detect it. It's the minor contributors, but we don't use those for rapid.
We see a sensitivity difference. You'll get more results in the lab,
conventional.
but it's not ever different.
Like in
You will identify the same person.
in one case, we had a clear single source major profile that matched to a convicted offender and matched in the lab. But the lab got a minor contributor, so we did a 2-person mixture. But still, the major part of the profile was concordant with rapid.
So we have another question coming in. Perhaps this one is for Tim. In addition to the federal grant rapid DNA programs mentioned, will there be state money available to help local law enforcement have access to rapid DNA?
I think so far, the only money out of the state for rapid has been the pilot program funding given to the Washington State Patrol that Jody mentioned. It's a question, I guess, is this starts to roll and local law enforcement starts to want to run more rapid, do property crimes, etc. Would the state legislature be willing to fund rapid at the local level? Under Washington State, forensic science has always been funded by the state, so the state takes a role on in taking care of that. But at the moment, there's no extra funding for rapid coming out of the state. Your only option is to get it out of the federal government, which is pretty robust at the moment. But I guess maybe Jody, I don't know. At the moment, it's just that pilot program for rapid. Is that right?
That's my understanding. And
Yeah.
we just received that one-time funding source. And so,
Yeah. So I mean, if the idea here is that kind of picture a dual system where, like Connecticut, let's say Washington State Patrol gets going and starts offering like Connecticut, and I think Jody, your plan is to keep in mind that FBI eligibility, and you set that up in a year or two. And would you be like Connecticut, where you put rapid at all your stations where local law enforcement could come in and use, like Connecticut, and then and you would have to get the funding from the legislature to do that. I suppose that the second phase of that would be the legislature could give grants to local governments to also get rapid to tie into that. But I would think that the first scenario where you're helping Washington State Patrol expand their rapid program like Connecticut's might be something the legislature takes on after you've proven the concept and have rolled out your pilot.
Okay, we have time for a few more. Let's see. Tony, maybe you go ahead and answer this one. This one states, can you process sexual assault kits on rapid DNA?
You're not going to do the whole kit. You could do reference samples. And the FBI has a procedure that if it exists in a lab to use modified rapid procedures, the buccal swabs, reference samples done in a lab can be processed and automatically uploaded to CODIS.
Maybe Connecticut, do you guys have
Mhm.
any experience with this you want to share?
We do. We've had success with sperm samples. So you could hypothetically do a sample from the kit. The issue that we're having with that is that the kit is submitted as a single submission, and because Rapid is outside of our scope, it's just like an itemization and chain of custody issue. But if the sample were to be collected separately and submitted as two separate things, then there's absolutely no issue with it. But it's successful in a technical sense, yes.
Okay, last question. Jody, this one will be for you. It states, as Washington State Patrol evaluates how to establish rapid DNA for their uses, will Washington State Patrol be able to advise the local governments that are purchasing their own rapid systems on best practices?
That would be once we get our experience. We are obviously there to help out and be able to answer questions.
Okay, well, that will wrap up our webinar for today. Thank you to all of the presenters and everyone who joined us today. Rapid DNA is certainly on its way to Washington State, and we hope this information is helpful as you consider the issues related to advancing rapid DNA in your jurisdiction. Please feel free to reach out to myself or GTH DNA if you have any questions or if your question didn't get answered. We also encourage you to visit www.gorapiddna.com, where you will find additional Rapid DNA policy and program information and updates. And again, we apologize to those of you that were unable to see our slides here today. And the webinar has been recorded and will be posted on gorapiddna.com, and the slides will be available for viewing there. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Tim. Hey, Tim. Hey, Tim. Hey, Tim.
Absolutely no issue with it, but it's successful in a technical sense, yes.
Okay, last question. Jody, this one will be for you. It states, as Washington State Patrol evaluates how to establish rapid DNA for their uses, will Washington State Patrol be able to advise the local governments that are purchasing their own rapid systems on best practices?
That would be once we get our experience. We are obviously there to help out and be able to answer questions.
Okay, well, that will wrap up our webinar for today. Thank you to all of the presenters and everyone who joined us today. Rapid DNA is certainly on its way to Washington State, and we hope this information is helpful as you consider the issues related to advancing rapid DNA in your jurisdiction. Please feel free to reach out to myself or GTH DNA if you have any questions or if your question didn't get answered. We also encourage you to visit www.gorapiddna.com, where you will find additional Rapid DNA policy and program information and updates. And again, we apologize to those of you that were unable to see our slides here today. And the webinar has been recorded and will be posted on gorapiddna.com, and the slides will be available for viewing there. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Tim? Hey, Tim? Hey, Tim?